Today for Devotions with Daniella, we are reading from the first book of Daniella, chapter 11, Apocalypse Now. Belo Horizonte, Brazil, 1999. Throughout the last year of the millennium, our level of persecution, panic, and preparations increased steadily. And it even seemed the Systemites were paying attention this time. That's you all. They'd given this version of the apocalypse the name Y2K, and it was coming because of man's reliance on computers and their lack of trust in God. After our last predicted apocalypse of 1993 hadn't occurred, many had lost faith or been purged from the family. I wondered what would happen this time. The adults were near euphoric, as though everything they'd sacrificed in their lives, all the creature comforts, money, careers, and family connections, was going to pay off. They would be vindicated and proved right. All I understood was that as soon as it became the year 2000, we weren't going to have electricity or clean water anymore. I lived each day worried about whether the ensuing mass confusion would be the beginning of the end times, something that I'd secretly begun to hope would never happen. Blasphemous, since preparing for the end times was the whole point of our religion. And just to note, when the children of God actually did come out and say, we don't think Jesus is coming back in our lifetime anymore, it blew up and fell apart. Same as MAGA saying, oh, we're not going to reveal the Epstein list, when the whole mission was to get the bad guys out and rain down political apocalypse on their enemies. When the mission evaporates, it's really hard to keep going. I guessed Mama Maria had learned from Grandpa's past predictions, because she never flat out said Y2K would be the end of the world. Grandpa had a few prophecies not come true, lost a bunch of followers, and then had to explain all the reasons why and assure everyone he was still the voice of God. The ones who stayed, like my parents, doubled down on their beliefs. This potential apocalypse worked the same way as all the other times, though. Something big was coming, and we needed to be ready. Everybody had to get right with God, rededicate themselves to his will, and spend additional hours every day reading his word and praying for guidance. We all needed to recommit, to become true believers, to deepen our faith and dedication. There were endless special ceremonies and loads of disaster preparation. In the end, we, God's chosen people, would be saved, while everyone else would spend an eternity in hell. I wanted the date to come and pass so we could move on to the next thing. 1 year to the next didn't make much of a difference to me. A lifetime of disappointment and growing doubts had reached their breaking point. At age 13, after getting excited and then disillusioned by the charter and how much it would really change our lives, after 2 years of cooking and labor instead of focusing on school, I'd decided that I was basically done. I knew I probably wouldn't be able to leave the family until I was 18, since I didn't have any obvious relatives or connections on the outside. But as the family prepared for the coming apocalypse, I started my own preparations. My plans were the secret I kept in the deepest part of the box hidden in my mind. Until I could escape, nothing would matter much, even the supposed coming apocalypse. In addition to my solitary time in the kitchen, I spent more time on long walks by myself. My one-on-one time with Mom disappeared as our walks expanded to group outings with the other teen girls through the neighborhoods surrounding our commune. As much as I missed our time alone together, I knew being with teenagers gave Mom a kind of freedom she'd never had before. I could see how much she enjoyed planning canned food drives, going to the free zoo, and taking us to ride bikes around a nearby lake. With us kids and teens, she was out of the presence of the watchful eyes of other family adults for the first time in her life, just like we were. On one such walk, my whole world changed. We were on a group outing in December in the middle of summer in Brazil, and the flowers were out in full force, rain showers coming to water them at a moment's notice, and then moving on, leaving blue sky and drenched earth. Getting caught in the rain was a pleasant enough feeling in the intense heat of an equatorial summer, but eyeglasses and the rain will never be friends. So I fell behind the others while trying to wipe the drops from my lenses, squinting hard to avoid tripping over my feet. I had to run to catch up with Mom, who looked back with a casual air and said, "Well, at least your vision isn't as bad as your sister Claire's. She's had to wear Coke bottle glasses practically since she was born." but I didn't have a sister Claire. For some reason, the expression Coke bottle glasses slipped around and around in my brain. I had never heard the phrase before, and how could Coke bottles possibly help anyone see? And what would Mom know about the most evil of sodas? But my head felt like it was going to explode. What sister Claire? I whispered hoarsely, more of a demand than a question. A look of surprise and confusion traveled across Mom's face, but she continued as natural as ever. You know, Claire and Cherish and Jonathan and Deborah from all the family music videos. Their dad is your dad, too. My head felt light and funny the way it did with champagne, the way it did with the boys playing their games back in Rio, with the uncles and their punishments, like I wasn't really in my body anymore. By this point, I had stopped walking, but Mom and the rest of the teen girls were still moving ahead. I was frozen in place as all the puzzle pieces fell into position inside my brain. Claire, my middle name. I thought of my baby photo album full of pictures of me and my 15-year-old mom and our family tree. In the spot for Dad was the teenage boy my mom had been married off to when she was 16. They were together for 2 years and he was gone before I was 5, before I could really remember much about him. Everyone said Mary looked like him, but I had never thought to question why I didn't. I watched Mom walking ahead, casually chatting with the older teen girls around her, as if my very life, my very knowledge of myself, wasn't being completely transformed. My mind made connection after connection, and I tried to make my legs race as fast as my brain to catch up to the rest of the group. When I caught up to them, out of breath, they were still laughing and talking. Nobody else was surprised by this revelation. Everyone knew, and everyone thought I knew, because it hadn't been a secret. It just wasn't talked about much. I was the only one who'd been left in the dark. When the gates of the compound finally came into view, I ran and grabbed a photo book, skipping a little bit. I frantically flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for, and then I stared and stared. That single photo of me, at not quite 2, in a pink dress with an old-fashioned lace collar and head covered in baby curls, snuggled next to Mom. And sitting next to her, previously unexplained to me, is Uncle John, the olive-skinned, curly-haired, and bespectacled lieutenant in the Prophet's inner circle, who had been sent away somewhere secret after I was born. He was at least twice, if not 3 times her age. There was no reason Mom would have been allowed to keep a picture of another adult, especially one so Selah, if what she was saying wasn't true. That man, that 50-year-old man, was my real father. This was why I looked nothing like Mom, because this man, my father's strong features overpowered all of her soft ones. A moment of relief washed through me that I'd never had a crush on Jonathan from the videos, my brother, with his movie star looks, the way all the other preteen girls did. From the way the aunties were sent from bed to bed, and based on how important Uncle John still was, I wondered how many other siblings I had in our world that I didn't know existed. But as I stared at the picture, I understood what I had always known deep down, but had never been able to articulate. Something more significant than having my world turned upside down and the basis of my identity changed. As I studied his face over and over, seeing elements of myself so clearly reflected that I wondered how I'd never seen it before, I realized what was wrong. She was so young, and he was so old. Was my dad older than my grandfather? Yes. And then I go through some realizations that this was rape. The word rape was anathema to us. Our children's comics taught us that it was impossible to be raped if we yielded. I realized the truth I had always suspected. They were liars. They had always been liars. But worse, they hurt kids. They hurt us. A series of thoughts repeated in my head over and over, lines of writing burned into my skull. That was rape. That was wrong. Nobody should hurt young girls the way I have been hurt, the way Mom has been hurt. That never should have happened. I couldn't stop my head from spinning in circles, could not stop the thought I knew I would never be able to unthink. I should not exist. You can get signed copies of Uncultured attached here or listen to me read it to you on Spotify Premium or anywhere else you get your audio.